Hi and welcome to this video, and in this video we're answering one of the technical questions that's come in during the week. So every week we like to answer technical questions, and this week we're actually answering a series of technical questions that have come in, I think, around the theme of testing chili peppers. Now, the same question asked some questions last week, and we actually did some testing of fresh chili peppers in the video. Let's just go through the questions that have come in during this week. What's its limits in terms of lower limits and upper limits? I think the hottest things that people have tested on this are things like Carolina Reaper powders. So those are more like 2 million Scoville heat units. The coolest things or the least spicy things that people have tested are things like I've tested Mike's Hot Honey, which I think comes in about 300 Scoville heat units. So we've got on record testing spicy mayonnaises, and spicy honeys. They call them hot honeys. It's a kind of new line item you find in supermarkets. These kind of things come in at about 300 Scoville heat units. And then the most hottest things that we've tested are Carolina Reaper powders. Be really careful, because so many people think that the Carolina Reaper pepper is 2.2 million Scoville heat units. It only goes to 2.2 million Scoville heat units if you desiccate it, drive it for that moisture. Otherwise, the actual pepper is about 220,000 Scoville heat units, because it's got 90% water content. So somebody says here that they want to test from, am I reading that right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I think I'm reading it as 0 to 1 million Scoville. 0 to 1 million Scoville heat units. I've always got a problem when people say 0, because it's very hard to actually think what chili product has 0. This is a spicy honey. It's probably one of the mildest spicy products out there. It's about 300 Scoville heat units. So there's not really a meaningfulness once you get to things like 1 Scoville heat unit, 10 Scoville heat units. It's kind of meaningless as to what that really means. 1 million Scoville heat units is absolutely fine. I do say this quite a lot, and I do demos of this, that there is no calibration of this equipment required. I'm just going to turn this off for a second and just grab something just to kind of indicate why we don't need any calibration of this equipment. Okay, so what I've done is, this is a bit of a spontaneous decision, but I've just grabbed a glucose meter, and I just want to kind of lay out why we don't require any calibration. So at Zimmer Peacock, we're ISO 13485. It means we're certified for the contract development, contract manufacturing, and medical diagnostics. So food testing, I'm sorry to say, is a little bit easier than actually trying to make medical diagnostics. But I'm going to use a medical diagnostic product as an indication. This is the Food Sense Generation 4. It's a meter with sensors. Okay, understood? Yeah. Now, this is a glucose strip. It's a meter with sensors. Oh, by the way, they're both electrochemical as well. Now, reason I'm doing this is I'm illustrating to you that here's a glucose meter. This is probably used by 100 million people across India every day, for example. Similar numbers in tens of millions in Europe and the USA every day. I'm just going to take a quick sample. Did I get that deep enough? No, I was being a bit cowardly. Right, so here's some blood for you. And they'll do a quick countdown. 3, 2, 1. Right, so my blood glucose is 107 milligrams per deciliter. Now, the reason I do that is, did you see me do any calibration? Did I do any calibration? No. Now, at Zimmer Peacock, most our day jobs are actually making technologies like this. So when we're doing food sense, we also don't require calibration. Why? When you do a scientific instruments are often designed to have calibration, because actually there's some sort of element of uncontrolledness in the device. At ZP, we know how to manufacture meters and sensors in a reproducible manner, and therefore we do not need to do calibration. So think of how many millions of blood glucose tests are done per day, and ask yourself how many of those patients or end users are actually doing calibration? And the answer is practically zero. And it's the same with the food sense generation 4, that we've used those principles of what's called point of care diagnostics in actually making the food sense generation 4. So this is a point of need test, and it does not require calibration each time a sample is measured. I have got a lot of videos out there, and you'll never see me do a calibration because we've actually carrying that philosophy into the device. So the quick answer to your question, it's a quick question as a quick answer. The quick answer is no, but I thought, well, hang on, let me just illustrate to you another electrochemical device, one for measuring blood glucose, admittedly not capsaicin in chilies. But clearly you can see another example of this kind of technology where, again, you don't need calibration. Why? Because they take care of the calibration or the during manufacturing, and they don't therefore send the problem out into the field. Whereas most scientific equipment, actually, they send the problem out and people have to do calibration when they're out there. Is there a limit to the number of tests of samples in a day or a month? No limit that we've put upon it. I mean, you know, you can do a test. I'll do a test for you shortly. You can time how long that test takes to do. You may find that I do an entire test in 2 minutes. So, you know, every 2 minutes you could be doing a test. The longest time is actually preparing the sample. I have previously shown some data on this YouTube channel where we show correlation against HPLC. In those particular samples, the HPLC was only done once because it's so expensive, they can only do it once. And they actually did the food sense testing in triplicates because it's so low cost and easy to do. But I will say this, I will not support people's eagerness to kind of show correlation with HPLC. The reason being is, if you're doing something in any part of the world, in Europe or USA or in India, you may have a local test house. And you may be quite satisfied with that local test house where they're doing HPLC testing for you. But I absolutely assure you that if you take your chili pepper and you send it to your local test house in Europe, and you send that chili sample to a different test house in USA or a different test house in India, you will get 3 different results. I've just had to stop actually trying to argue that we correlate with HPLC. We have data, I've put it on the website, I've displayed it in webinars, but I will not support this conversation on, you know, how we correlate against HPLC. I don't think people would be interested in food sense generation 4 if there wasn't a problem with HPLC. And I think the problem with HPLC is it's expensive to get done, it takes a long time, and people are actually not really believing the results that they're getting back. So it is, ZP, when we first launched this in generation 1, I was very keen to support this correlation with HPLC. And then I realized, you know, we did studies where we would try different HPLC houses and we realized, hang on, they're not all giving the same results. They're not giving the same results. So then when you say, do you correlate with HPLC? The answer is yes, but I don't necessarily correlate with your local HPLC house, because your local HPLC house may not correlate that well with a lab in a neighboring state. And that's the problem. HPLC testing, people really take it like it's a gold standard, and maybe it is when it's done really well, but when you're actually got a very low margin industry like chilies, and you're trying to run instruments which cost you 50 to 100,000 US dollars, and you're trying to charge a minimum amount for those testing, the throughput just means that they're not able to do the kind of precision and accuracy that people think they're getting. So I don't long support this correlation with HPLC. We do have our test results. There is work from the university. A guy called Charlie Rower. Has done some. He's an academic. Has done some correlation work with us. We have the food sense generation 4, which is for testing the Scoville heat unit of chilies. I'll do a quick demonstration in a minute, but I'll also show you a slide in a minute where we've also got a new unit coming for also measuring the ASTA colour. But we're not giving the pricing out for the ASTA colour unit. We're only offering it to people who are currently using the food sense generation 4. So unless you've already got a food sense generation 4, we're not at the moment releasing the ASTA colour unit to anyone else. So I will not be giving a quotation on the ASTA colour unit. Your sensors and buffers will last 12 months. After 12 months, they'll have expired. I'm not going to build... In Europe, we have a very strict law on giving out personal details for people. It's called GDPR. I did notice this on YouTube the other day. This is a guy called Ed Curry. And I did notice Ed Curry was being interviewed about the hotness of his sauces, because Ed Curry, first of all, bred the Carolina Reaper and now has bred Pepper X. And I think Carolina Reaper had a Scoville heat unit of 2.2 million when desiccated, not the fresh pepper. The fresh pepper's 200,000, sort of 220,000 Scoville heat units. And then he actually bred, I think, the Pepper X, which is about 2.6 million Scoville units, but not the fresh pepper. The fresh pepper is about 260,000 Scoville heat units. It's only when you desiccate it, drive off all the moisture, that you can then get to the sort of 2.6 million Scoville units. People don't realise that when they're talking about the hotness of chili peppers, they're often referring to the dried version, the desiccated version, not the fresh pepper. Anyway, he was doing an interview the other day, and I did notice that he did have a Food Sense Generation 4 box up on the shelf behind him. So I thought that was kind of quite amusing. So this is the ASTA colour unit that's coming pretty soon, but we will only offer it to people who are already using Food Sense Generation 4. So I will not be quoting on it. I will not be, putting the prices out there. If you're a Food Sense Generation 4 user, great. You can then get early access to the to this colour, ASTA colour unit, but otherwise you can't have early access to it. And but if you do become a Food Sense Generation 4 user, that's when you can start accessing that. I'm just going to do a quick demonstration. The reason I'm going to do a quick demonstration is because I think there's a sort of a keenness to sort of show correlation with HPLC. But if HPLC is so great, there would be no room for Food Sense Generation 4. But the fact is, I mean, I was asked the same question in a massive demo I was doing the other day with a very big international chili breeder who's got some probably plantations in South America and also in India. And they were asking the same correlation with HPLC. And I said to him, do you really believe the HPLC results? And the guy said, no, we don't believe the HPLC results. That's why we're talking to you. So that's the point about HPLC. Anyway, this is a super simple unit to use. The other thing about HPLC is when you're doing HPLC, or rather when you get the test done, you very rarely see that sample prepared and ran. You don't. You just send the sample in and you just, get a result back. But with this system, you can actually do the science yourself. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. You can do the test yourself, so you can have that kind of reassurance that who did the science, and you can know who did the science. And if there's a query, you can query yourself, whereas you can't with an HPLC test. I think there's often a delay of about 4 weeks with HPLC as well, so there's kind of, it's so late in coming, then it's kind of useless to people by the time they actually got the result. I'm just going to vortex this for 20 seconds. 20, 19, 18, 17, 16, 15, 14, 13, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Right, so that'll be probably good enough. So I vortex that, and what I'm going to do is just put that sensor, a fresh sensor on. Let's do it. So I do this because by the time I've done this test, you probably wouldn't even have prepared a sample to send out for HPLC testing. And if you do send a sample out, it's going to cost you something like $25 in probably in India, $50 at a minimum in the USA, more like 100, and a similar about $100 in Europe. So what I'm going to now do is I'm just going to get my phone, actually, make sure that I've connected. So let me just do that. Alright, so I'm just going to connect the app. Right, now I'm going to scan a QR code so I can go into the right. Alright, so I'm in Chile, good. So you can see most of the time, actually I should have just turned this on before, but it doesn't matter. It gives you a good sense of the technology. Right, so that's connected. I'll put demo here so I can find this later on. Frank's red hot. I did a 1 in 10 dilution, so I'll make a note of that. Number 1, that'll do. And I'll go back. Right, okay. Right, so I've got the sensor in there. I've got a 50 microliter pipette. I'm just going to put the sample on, which I will do now. On it goes. Right, I will hit continue. I don't need to do this because I only did a 1 in 10 dilution. Oh, by the way, this really helps, by the way. We've got all these different dilutions because if somebody's really hot, we can actually do something like a 1 in 10,000 dilution. If somebody's really mild, we can do a 1 in 5 dilution. With this one, I only did a 1 in 10 dilution. And if you don't need to worry about the dilution. It will tell you what dilution to use because it'll take a measurement, and if it's too dilute, it'll tell you to dilute less, and if it's too concentrated, it will tell you to dilute more. I'm just going to, I can see the raw data jumping up there now. I'm just going to a cloud system that I've got called Julie, because every time we do a result, the result is also sent to the phone. So I've got a result here of about 2,710 Scoville heat units, and I can go up to here, which I will do. So screen 2. I'll just put in my word demo. There's my demo. I'll find my unit, find my source, which I will do. This will jump up, and then I can see my peak 1, my peak 2, and my peak 3. And I can see my analysis. I got my results, which is here. I can time, date, and I can download the data here as well, export as a PDF. So you can also export it and get your own record. So I'm sorry to say, but that's much quicker than kind of an HPLC analysis. I can probably do the whole preparation, analysis, and certificate of analysis. I don't know, 3 minutes. Whereas normally it would take you just 3 minutes just to probably bag up the sample, fill out the documents, and send it off. So if you do have any questions regarding Food Sensor Generation 4, I would simply say don't hesitate to reach out to us. Okay, thanks very much.